The history that the children are learning today is not going to be history that's going to be taught in the next 25 years. It's going to be radically different. We now know for a fact that long before Columbus, there were 4 major migrations of blacks to the Americas, different parts of the Americas, for totally different reasons, totally separated from each other by many centuries. But nonetheless, there were these black, you can call them migrations, but they were not entirely. I'll describe, and you can make up your own mind what they were. The most recent of these took place about 400 years before Columbus was even born, and it's all outlined in a marvelous book over there. It's called The Golden Trade of the Moors. And it is now known that the West African kingdom of Mali had huge fleets of merchant vessels, and that these kings, these black kings of West Africa, began sailing across the Atlantic to Mexico as early as 900 AD. Now, why did they do that? They did that for trade, not for conquest or invasion. They did this for trade. Mali was very wealthy in gold. They had lots of minerals. Some of the black kingdoms, they were called the Yoruba or the Benin. They were great workers in bronze. But the trouble with West Africa, and it's still a trouble today, not enough food, famine. Somehow, the black kings of Mali had preserved this tradition of long before, where there was this kingdom across the sea, a totally different one. It was very hard to reach. You needed to have excellent ships and good sailors, and nobody in Europe was doing it this time. But if you cross that sea, this other kingdom across the Atlantic was very rich in a certain kind of food, which the people over there called maize. We now call corn. And these West African kings launched at least 2 major fleets, trading ventures, that went across the Atlantic 900 AD to about 1600 AD. And they brought over their bronze work, and they taught the Mexican people, the ancient Mexican people, who were then known as the Mayas. The Mayas had built up a great kingdom of their own, but in 900 AD they were in decline. They were really on the outs. Nobody knows exactly why, but their society was in decline. They were losing all of their technology. Then these black fleets came across from West Africa, from Mali, and they presented a lot of gold work, bronze work, and in return, they came back with shiploads of corn, maize. Now, we know for sure that this actually happened because very recently, you'll see in the next issue of our magazine, not this issue, the next issue is coming out in about 2 weeks. This is part of the discoveries are happening so fast and furious, it's hard to keep track. They now have found that a certain type of maize or corn, which is growing in West Africa, has been growing there for many centuries, is not native to West Africa. It is a type of corn which comes from Mexico. Could have only been brought over by these Mali seafarers over 1,000 years ago. So this is a first concrete proof that they beat Columbus by centuries. And we're not just on a voyage of exploration. They were going back and forth, bringing corn back. Now, why don't we know about that? Well, this trade stopped abruptly 1600 AD. 1600 AD, the Spanish, the Portuguese were on a real aggressive colonizing campaign, and they took over Africa, and they destroyed a lot of these kingdoms. And with the destruction of these kingdoms went all the knowledge and all the history of these past trades. This is a tremendous lesson for us because, you know, we're so proud of our American civilization. We think it'll go on forever. But when a civilization falls, history tells us it takes almost all memory of it with it. Civilization is really very fragile. And that's why these lessons from the past are very, very important. If we want to preserve our civilization, we have to learn what happened to these others that crashed. So we know for sure between 900 and 1600 AD, long before Columbus was even born, as I say, these blacks were trading, these black kingdoms